Everyone, we are here for the most exciting panel of this today. It's the Diversity and Inclusion panel, and it's my privilege to welcome the esteemed panelists, Felix, Shalini, and Karen. All right, wonderful. How are you guys doing? I think everyone is excited, and there is going to be a networking event later, which I'll tell you a little bit more about if you stay the full course of this session. I'm Mabel. I'm Managing Director of Alton Aviation Consultancy in Singapore, but I'm also the Board Director of Women in Aviation Singapore. And this is an organization that seeks to empower and develop women in the aviation industry through networks and programs. And we are privileged and honored to be the diversity partner for this event. So today, we have a very important topic to talk about, and it's really about how inclusiveness and innovation can go together. Before I let the panelists introduce themselves a little bit, each of you, please also include one word that best describes you or your organization's philosophy to diversity and inclusion. Just one word, making it a little bit difficult for you at the start. But why is this topic important? The aviation industry is on its rebound from the pandemic days and is projected to grow and double in traffic by 2040. And guess which region is the one that's contributing more than 40% of new passengers? Correct, Asia Pacific. So, and where would we be able to find the talent to cope with this growth? And naturally, one of the strategies is really, besides encouraging STEM education, is through gender diversity, encouraging more women, people of different backgrounds, to join the aviation industry. Because only then, with manpower, with talent pipeline, can we truly propel the industry forward. So without further ado, I'll let Shalini.
Good evening. It's an honor and privilege to be here representing Amadeus at the Aviation Festival Asia. I'm Shalini. I head People and Culture for Asia Pacific. Have been with Amadeus for 15 years now. And of course, we have a very large and diverse team here in Asia Pacific, and happy again to represent them here today at this very great forum. One word that would describe Amadeus is embracing.
Embracing, very well, very good. Later we'll hear about your philosophy a little bit more. Karen.
Shalini took my word. So I'll change to another word, it's progress. Progress. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Chan. I'm the Group Chief Commercial Officer for AirAsia Group. I don't use pronouns. I'm female. And I'm very glad to be here to go and share AirAsia's journey as well on how we actually embrace diversity, inclusion, and how from top down and as well as bottoms up, how we actually live and walk the talk.
Felix.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. That's how we say a pleasant afternoon to all in the Philippines. I'm Felix Lopez. I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer of Cebu Pacific. I would not assume that everybody knows Cebu Pacific, so let me introduce our organization quickly. We are the leading airline in the Philippines. We fly to 35 domestic destinations. Philippines is an archipelago, and we also fly to 25 international destinations, including Singapore. We are an LCC. The farthest that we fly would be Dubai and Australia. Our fleet is quite young, average 5.2 years, combination of turboprop, narrow-body, and wide-body jets. One word, intentional. Our approach to equity, diversity, and inclusion has been intentional. Prior to 2019, all of our initiatives have been piecemeal, But in 2019, we were intentional to come up with a comprehensive, a holistic approach and roadmap on equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you. I'm very glad that you brought up the word intentional because I'm going to share a short story. Last week was the air show and there were lots of meetings. One meeting that particularly left an impression on me was with this rather actually very senior leader of aviation organization. And when we introduced that we were from Women in Aviation Singapore, he said, "Why are you wasting your time?" And I was a little bit shocked, so he elaborated. Women are a drain on resources because, if they give birth, I have to, provide the position open for a year. There's no women in my management team, but that's okay. Now, that leaves me thinking that actually there's quite a lot of work to be done still in the industry. How important is the role of diversity in your organizations? Maybe starting from Shalini and then going down to Felix. How important is the role of diversity and inclusion in your organization? And what role does diversity and inclusion play in promoting innovation in your organization? Shalini.
At Amadeus, diversity, inclusion has been a way of life forever. I mean, even before DEI became, this buzzword, the buzz phrase where everybody started to talk about it, creating awareness, and then everybody started to really intentionally take steps towards working on that. I think Amadeus, our culture, our DNA is really steeped in diversity, in inclusion. And why do I say that? Because we have presence in more than 150 countries worldwide, with more than 140 nationalities present in our offices, embracing diversity for a very long time. We always had more than 40% women in our workforce globally, multicultural, multilingual, embracing. And why did I say embracing? Because despite where you come from, what your background is, Amadeus is an organization which makes you feel at home, where you can collaborate easily with people across the globe and come up with really super ideas, conquer the market that you're working towards and, gain market share, gain product innovation, etc. That's been a way of life for us. That doesn't mean that we are taking it lightly. We still continue to invest more and more into this area. So if you look at, as an executive committee, as a board, we have pledged, through the IATA program of 25 by 2025. This is a commitment we have made in public where we, are ready to say this is our commitment. How do we fare towards that? What are we going to do about it? And let all our stakeholders, internal, external, know about it. So I think it takes a lot of courage for an organization to stand there and make this kind of commitments. It shows how deeply it runs into your culture.
I think well said, because I've interacted with a lot of the Amadeus staff across the Singapore office, and I would say that the culture is very much very empowering, right, and very embracing, in your word, of diversity and inclusion. Now, Karen, what's the progress word mean to you, and how is the role of diversity and inclusion encouraging innovation?
Indeed, I just want to echo and build on what Shalini mentioned as well. Before DEI is even popular in the lingo, we talk about culture a lot. And for AirAsia, DEI is basically the output. We need to start with culture, which is the backbone and the DNA of any organization. And the shared belief that everybody has a voice, the common standard that we hold ourselves and each other accountable to, makes diversity and inclusion possible. So let me give you a very simple example. In AirAsia, we don't call our staff employees. We actually call them all-stars. This corporate signaling that everybody in the organization are rock stars, especially the frontliners who are actually our ambassadors, serving our passengers, not us sitting in the office. They are the all-stars. I think that is a very, very important signal and a trigger for people to know that respect, across all different levels is paramount. And I want to talk about some of the values that we actually hold very true to. The first one that has actually been, it's from top down. Our founder, Tony Fernandez, he always talked about dare to dream. He came from the music industry. He was a CEO for Warner, and then he decided to become, a CEO for an airline. He always talked about dare to dream. Now, what does that mean? I'll give you an example. Diversity is not just about gender. It's also about ability. It's also about mindset. So in an airline, we have many, many different functions. One of our ramp boy, he has been working with us for close to 12 years. His dream is to become a pilot. He failed the test 4 times, and just this January, he finally passed. So to me, the diversity is that you will never be pigeonholed in one particular role, but you are able to continue to have the opportunity and the ability to grow within the organization. To me, I think that's what makes AirAsia very beautiful.
Thank you. I think well said, Felix.
Yep. I think the best way to answer your question is to provide statistics. Earlier I said we were intentional on our approach. Since 2019, it's a journey, and we continue to journey. But top-line data that we have currently, and you talked about women in leadership. Since we were intentional in our approach, 52% of our leaders are women. Even for roles that are predominantly male, we now get to see IT as a function, 40% are women. Aircraft engineers and mechanics, 30% are women in Cebu Pacific. Pilots, for the longest time in Cebu Pacific, you'd hardly see a woman pilot. But now we have at least 10% of our population, women pilots. LGBTQIA+, given the self-ID survey that we've recently conducted, close to 100 persons with disability. You've mentioned that when you talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, it's not just gender. We also did a self-ID survey, around 20 are within the organization. So this would be top-line statistics that we have. And some milestones that I'd like to share would be that from 2019 to now, we're the only airline in the Philippines who have bravely hired trans women cabin crew in 2019. More so this year, we've included in our medical benefit and our free flight benefit for employees and dependents, people with same-sex partners and common law partners. Last year, we even flew a flight to celebrate Pride Month. All the ground staff, all the crew and the pilots, even the aircraft engineers, the mechanics who assisted the flight, are all members of the LGBTQIA+ community. So these are some of the milestones on how we've journeyed on EDI.
Well, thank you. Karen, when we go to the Red Queue, so that's the AirAsia headquarters, for those who have the chance to visit their headquarters, you will notice the one thing that really strikes you is this long slide that goes from, I think, level 3 all the way down to the ground. And it is really, innovative way to engage the employees. So, Karen, I think you're best fit to answer this question, which is, how does diversity play to your innovating, be it within the organization or as a Chief Commercial Officer of AirAsia, to your products and services, right, to the consumers? Because we know that it is important. About half of the population are females, and we have people from across the region, diverse backgrounds. You surely cannot have a homogeneous product. So how does diversity and inclusion play to your becoming a better, commercial organization?
Mabel, I need to share a little secret with you. The slide that you talk about, from the 6th floor to the 4th floor, normally if we don't like a person, we actually ask them to leave by the slide. No, I'm just kidding. In fact, we have the CEO from Airbus visiting us last Monday, and we actually make him go down the slide. We have a fun culture. It's all about work hard, play hard, and that basically starts from the founder. In terms of what you mentioned about diversity and innovation, the most important piece is if we need to embrace diversity and inclusion, we need to go and have communication, and we need to have the right tools to allow voices to be heard. I'm sure most of the organizations, we have our own social intranet, whether you use Workplace, whether you use a different system. And we have something called ThinkBox. Everybody can put their ideas into the think box. And this is a real incident. My team can vouch for it. Last weekend, Tony put a post up there. And he said, anybody who can actually give me 3 ideas on how we can go back to being simple. How do we go and unclutter and actually remove complexity in what we do? You'll win 5,000 ringgit. Within, I think, 2 hours, we got close to 500 different responses. And one of the insights that I gleaned is actually from the cabin crew, not from our senior leadership team, not from our strategy team. What she put down was very simple. We are a low-cost carrier, and majority of our flights are within 4 hours. She noticed that a lot of customers who have purchased a meal on some of the shorter flights, say less than 1.5 hours, they purchase a meal, but they don't eat it. They do not consume it in flight. Then she realized that a lot of the passengers are actually taking our nasi lemak home to go and give it to their families. It might be one passenger traveling, but the passenger might be buying 3 nasi lemak meals. She said, can we at least have some brown paper bags for our customers to actually bring them back home? It's as simple as that. And when we talk about increasing incremental ancillary revenue, this is one way, by just having availability of brown paper bags. So to me, when we talk about innovation and diversity, we start with having a right platform, a forum that allows everybody to contribute.
That's must be very delicious nasi lemak you have on your flight.
I give it a 10 out of 10.
All right. Now, Felix, let's hear from the other low-cost carrier.
Also, LCC, yes.
How has diversity and inclusion, right, added to your commercial journey?
Sure. So I'll just dovetail to what Karen said because I think those are very good examples. In Cebu Pacific, more than just looking at the actual day of travel, we actually looked into the touch points, the digital touch points before the day of travel. So this would be your online bookings. So as an example, for persons with reduced mobility, part of our online digital booking experience would be the option that the person with reduced mobility can already click, I need a wheelchair during my day of travel, or I would want to bring my emotional support animal during the flight. So these are features that are already active in our booking site in Cebu Pacific. More than that, in terms of infrastructure, we made intentional investments. So for example, the Avi ramp, instead of using stairs, right? So Avi ramp, so that at least people with reduced mobility would have a better experience climbing the aircraft.
Right. So we heard a little bit about voices of the industry, but how about from people who have yet to join the industry? I think that is an important area to start in terms of diversity and inclusion. How do you work with educational institutions to try and promote this diversity and inclusion, and how to make sure that people of diverse background have a way to enter the aviation industry? Shalini?
Sure. I think the talent of tomorrow is in these colleges, in the campuses, and the educational institutes of today. And I think real change will happen over a period of time. So we really believe at Amadeus that going and partnering with these educational institutes and making a difference at that level within the society is very important. Because while a lot of organizations are tackling this challenge, with their lateral hires, with programs internally, externally, I think some of this mindset shift has to happen much earlier with parents, with the society, and with, of course, these young graduates who are still in school or college. There are many programs that we have invested in over the years. For example, in India, we work with a lot of girls' colleges which are offering STEM or science as a subject or engineering as a subject. We work with these colleges very early on to look at creating interest in girls to actually pursue a career. Because in India, it's still, societally, it is still very common that girls complete their education, but they never pursue a career after. So how do you bring that change in mindset very early on with the girls, with the colleges to encourage them to do that, and also with the parents? So that's one aspect which we are tackling. The second thing we observed is while there are about 40% girls in an engineering campus, only 10% actually make it to the placements that happens in an organization. So we had to wonder why this was happening, because if there are 40% girls in campus, there should be an equal representation at the entry-level workforce, but then it dramatically falls down to 10. What is causing this? So we are working to understand that, and we realize that a lot of girls are probably not inherently working a lot on practical exposure, on coding challenges, on ideating, on hackathons, and that's not their natural inclination. So how do you start working with them early on to build that interest, that mindset towards that, and make them more ready to take up such roles? In Philippines, for example, in Manila, we are working with a partner, which is again helping us go to tackle students who come from really underprivileged background. Some of them come from families which do not even have a family monthly income of, or a daily income of even $5. So how are they going to afford education for their children? So over a period of several years, with this partnership today, we are able to place many of these young students into a diverse industry, including aviation, including tech, banks, and wherever it is. But I think some of these partnerships very early on shows the intention that goes beyond just tackling our problems for today, but building the future of tomorrow.
Right, indeed. I think, with just like a chess game cannot be played without chess pieces. We cannot talk about the future of aviation without, its workforce, its talent pool. Now, she mentioned Philippines, so I have to direct this to you as well. So, how is your work with the education institutions? Is that also intentional and deliberate?
Okay. In terms of our EDI roadmap, we worked with an educational institution, the premier university in the Philippines, UP. University of the Philippines helped us craft our policy on EDI and our roadmap. They've also helped us socialize it through training programs. But on top of that, I think the question earlier was really more, how do you attract talents and leverage on equity, diversity, and inclusion? I think as a storyline, an organization that celebrates equity, diversity, inclusion, sense of community is a good hiring strategy. And we leverage on that in Cebu Pacific through actual employee stories. Our employees, given their employee experience in our company, would share this, for example, in LinkedIn, right? In 2023, we were awarded as Best Employer Brand in the Philippines. In terms of followerships, we're number 3 in the Philippines compared to the different Philippine companies there, number 1 amongst the airlines as well in the Philippines. So I think as a strategy, having a clear EDI roadmap and having clear milestones and success stories would really be an effective hiring strategy. It's not only educational institutions that we partner with. I'd also like to add this. We are very conscious that we don't own the wealth of knowledge, and therefore we partner with other institutions. So for example, with regard to gender, we partnered with 2 other associations in the Philippines, PBCW and also PFIP. With regard to persons with special abilities, we partnered with PBDN and recently the Vanguard Academy. We've started accepting interns this week who are members or kids who are within the autism spectrum. We've also partnered with Autism Society of the Philippines, Down Syndrome Society of the Philippines. So we are very deliberate in partnering with groups who can add to our wealth of knowledge with regard to EDI.
All right. Mabel, if I can just add just 2 points here, because we talked a lot about campuses and engineering colleges, etc. Something that we do in Singapore, by the way, is the Girls in Aviation, and going as early as 8 to 14-year-old, girls and creating interest in them to pursue a career in aviation is something that's really seeding that thought very early on. And I know that, we work with your organization. We have Sarah who's actively participating in these discussions. I think that's really incredible. The other thing that I just wanted to also mention is that this generation that's coming into the workplace now is so much more aware and so much more intentional than probably we were. So sometimes when you go to a campus and hire students, they actually are asking us today, what is your DEI strategy? Are you open to hiring people who are differently abled? Are you ready to accept people who come from the community, from the LGBTQI plus community? There are people who actually ask us this. And as an organization, I think when you say and when you showcase that you're really clear about this and your culture embodies that, that is a big plus for the next generation that's coming into the workplace. And I think that is something we should be ready to embrace as well.
Thank you. I think well said, because at Women in Aviation Singapore, one of the core programs that we have is really outreach, and to reach out to girls at a young age, and we include their parents as well, because parents have a way of influencing the children into the path they take. I want you to be a doctor, but then aviation can be an industry for them, and this is where we want to encourage that mindset as well. So outreach is indeed one area, but I think beyond outreach, the other program that we have is really when young executives, they enter the aviation industry. How can we ensure that the playing field is level, right? Not just for women, but for disadvantaged, for anyone with a diverse background. How do you ensure that there's a level playing field? What are some of the policies that is set in place in your company that allows for this? Maybe you start with Felix and then Karen.
Sure. Perhaps let me share two concrete initiatives. We've branded our EDI policy and roadmap. We call it the Inclusive Space. Of course, it's a play of the word inclusive, right? SEB is Cebu Pacific, so inclusive space. So all of our initiatives on EDI are anchored in that. For people to better understand all of our initiatives and programs on this inclusive space framework, we've also incorporated in our learning and development platform in our SEB University, SEBU for short, we've created the School for Diversity and Inclusion. Okay, a differentiator, we started this year. We've included deans of schools. We've created from 3 schools from the past, we now have 8 schools. One of the 8 schools will be School of Diversity and Inclusion. A different, unique item that we've done this year is we've appointed, or we've convinced, and they volunteered as well eventually, MANCOM members to be the school deans. So our Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer is the Dean for Diversity and Inclusion. And under that school will be several programs. So some would be SOGI 101, Embracing Equity, Allyship. So really cultivating the awareness, really ensuring that in terms of operationalization of terms, in terms of deeper understanding, EDI is deeply embedded in our culture.
Thank you.
For any efforts for DEI to be effective and sustainable, I think it has to be a full funnel intentionality to make it work. It starts with recruitment. How intentional are we to go and source a diverse pool of talent? Again, I'm not just talking about gender, but even work experience. Are we actually looking at basically the same stereotype, or are we actually broadening out? For AirAsia, we have 45 different nationalities. And even in my team today, right, we have Thai, we have Filipino, we have Irish. We are very, very intentional in the hiring. The other piece is that if we do not actually have a pipeline, from the very beginning at the entrance level, you already have diversity, you would already have a vacuum in middle management, and by the time you go to the directorships and the boards, you will have to go and helicopter in. So I think the consistency in being able to go and hire and recruit from entrance level, I think it's important. The second part then is basically system. Does your NRC actually award pay parity by gender? In AirAsia, it is very clear. Your pay is awarded by performance. There's no differentiation in your creed, in your color, in your race. And I think that's something that, we have been very proud of and we hold by. The third piece is enforcement. When we talk about diversity and inclusion, what sort of enforcement is there? So recently, sometimes I walk and sometimes I take the lift. I saw on the lift lobby, they actually have a poster which says, "It is never it's just a joke. And then the word just then get crossed out. It's never a joke. Are we serious about eliminating microaggression in the office, in the way we actually interact with our customers or even with our suppliers? We have a zero tolerance for any type of bullying in AirAsia. And I think that is one way of basically sustaining these efforts. Yeah.
I think increasingly, right, it's not just the employees, as Shalini talked about, the new recruits who see diversity and inclusion as a way of them belonging to a company. But increasingly, we have shareholders, we have investors who are demanding that companies look at D&I as one of their KPIs. And so, I think the future hopefully is bright. We're moving towards the right direction. We have time for one last question, and I just want to talk about, from each of you, what the future holds in 2024 for diversity and inclusion in your organization. This year, 2024, is the year that Asia Pacific will return to pre-COVID traffic, and I think we have a lot to look forward to. So what is it in the area of D&I that we can expect from your organization this year? Shalini?
Again, very intentional programs put across several layers in the organization, right from your early campus graduates, moving on to your early career returnees, looking at building more technical depth and that kind of talent at senior levels, looking at role models, women mentoring programs, looking at how women can take let's say senior roles in the organization. How are we preparing them for that? How are we looking at programs that helps them get there? So there are very specific programs that are getting designed at various steps of your career to get there. Then let's talk about embracing other kinds of diversity. There is age diversity. There is diversity in terms of people who are coming from, let's say, neurodiverse kind of background. So how do you integrate everybody at the workplace? And I think one area that a lot of times companies overlook, and at Amadeus we are starting to work a lot on that, is actually looking at your workspaces, your physical workspaces, because you realize that our physical workspaces sometimes are not ready to embrace all these diverse kind of people who come into the organization. And you'll be surprised to see how unaware we are about how those little enhancements, little changes in our workspace can make it much more inclusive and embracing to a lot of people. And I'll just talk for a second beyond Amadeus, because I was looking at some numbers and I saw that in the aviation industry, there are only 3% women in a lot of the jobs that are there in the aviation industry. And these jobs, I believe, have been historically, been with men, and therefore the workspaces and your workplace is probably driven a lot by what the needs of the men were at the workplace. But when you have and you want to have more women taking up these roles, which could be your technicians, your supervisors on the ground, at the airport, there are a lot of enhancements that you probably need to do, not just for women, but for the other genders, but for people who are neurodiverse, who are differently able, etc., to make that workspace easily accessible, easily be working around with. So I think focusing a little bit more on the workspace that you create physically for some of these jobs are going to be very important. It's also true that some of these jobs need you to work late hours, late shifts, differing hours, and all of those things. Are you thinking of all that when you are accommodating and wanting to, embrace these kind of diverse works? So that's what I would say.
Yes, I'll add on to that as well, because we are increasingly facing an aging population. So if we want to be inclusive and we recognize that people will work longer and there will be older people within the workforce. So in terms of processes, in terms of the ability to automate some of the physical processes, I think that will go a long way to increasing the pool of talent that we can tap on, but more importantly, making the workplace a safe environment for even the older workers. So I think that workplace review is really in order. Karen.
I chose the word progress because DEI is a journey. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. For AirAsia, we believe data can provide a lot of insights. Of course, I need to caution that diversity inclusion is deeply human, and we're not trying to go and replace it by AI. But what we have actually instigated since about 2 years back is that we actually have NPS scoring. And as we all know, Net Promoter Score is not about the absolute number, it's about the trend. How do we actually understand what our all-stars are thinking about in terms of the diversity, in terms of inclusion? How do we actually have empirical evidence rather than just basically, sound bites? I think that's one area that we need to continue to deep dive in.
Thank you. Felix, I know I've read one of your interviews and you said you're a catalyst of change. So what can we expect in 2024?
Yeah, I think what all of us would like to avoid is that EDI just becomes a buzzword that will just fade away, right? We want it to stick. And in Cebu Pacific, for it to stick, we've included that in our balanced scorecard. EDI is one of the materiality indices and sustainability. What gets measured gets done, so we've embedded that in our BSCs of the CEO, of the ManCom. I've also would dovetail to what Karen said earlier. We'll continuously do employee listening initiatives. We have a robust one now. The most common would be mid-year, year-end pulse survey. But in Cebu Pacific, we also couple that with monthly employee net promoter score surveys and added the qualitative question on how can we further improve your employee experience. We frequently do town halls, coffee sessions with a diverse group of employees, and the importance of data. From all of this employee listening initiatives, we crunch the data, interpret the data, and supposedly this data is very powerful. And from this data, we come up with our employee personas. And these employee personas would guide us on what motivates a big chunk of our population, right? Or what would be triggers for this population to leave us. So given that we also know these employer personas, we're able to be deliberate, again, intentional, on how we do our employee experience initiatives in Cebu Pacific. So we'll continuously do this, and EDI is a journey, right? We put up our policy in 2019. Yes, we have our milestones, but we'll continuously journey. And we want this to stick in the cultural fabric of Cebu Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the keynote sessions for today. I hope that, the aviation industry has signed on to net zero 2050. Hope that there will be one day, there will be initiatives to say, let's move towards a D&I culture for every aviation company by 2050 as well. So thank you very much. Please put your hands together and give all our panelists a warm applause.